My name is Olivia Chen, and at 33 years old, I've learned that success is often quietest, right before it becomes impossible to ignore. I'm what you might call a silent achiever in the tech investment world, the kind of person who prefers letting results speak rather than broadcasting every minor victory. My older sister Vanessa, though, she's always been the opposite. 3 years my senior at 36, Vanessa has perfected the art of making her accomplishments known to everyone within earshot, especially when I'm around to hear them. Ever since we were children, she's positioned herself as the star of our family, the golden child with the prestigious education, the impressive career at Glowpath Marketing, and the picture-perfect life she flaunts at every family gathering. Senior brand strategist at Glowpath, she'd announce with practiced casualness, as if she hadn't rehearsed that line in the mirror a dozen times. What Vanessa doesn't know, what none of my family knows yet, is that 3 weeks ago, I became a major investor in Centauri Holdings, the parent company that owns Glowpath. Yes, that Glowpath. The same company where my sister struts around in her designer heels, believing she's climbing the corporate ladder faster than anyone else. The irony of the situation isn't lost on me as I drive to our father's 65th birthday brunch this Sunday morning. For years, I've endured Vanessa's subtle and not-so-subtle jabs about my little job and modest lifestyle choices. I've sat through countless family dinners where she dominated the conversation with stories about her important clients and office politics, barely allowing me to speak about my own career. Today, though, something feels different. My phone has been buzzing all morning with emails addressed to Ms. Chen, major stakeholder, requesting my approval on executive decisions, including some that will directly affect Vanessa's department. I'm nervous, excited, and if I'm being completely honest, a small part of me is looking forward to the moment when Vanessa realizes that the little sister she's been looking down on for decades is now, effectively, her boss's boss. Not that I plan to reveal this information intentionally, but family brunches with Vanessa have a way of bringing things to the surface, especially when she starts questioning my career choices in front of everyone. I grip the steering wheel tighter, wondering if today will finally be the day when everything changes between us. Growing up as Vanessa Chen's younger sister meant living in a perpetual shadow. Our childhood home in suburban Connecticut was spacious enough for a family of 4, but somehow there never seemed to be enough room for both of our personalities to shine. Vanessa was the textbook firstborn, confident, outspoken, and naturally talented at winning adult approval. I was the quiet observer, the one who preferred reading in corners to performing in living rooms. This dynamic wasn't necessarily anyone's fault. Our parents loved us both, I never doubted that. But there was an unmistakable difference in how they responded to us. "Look at Vanessa's beautiful painting," they'd exclaim, proudly displaying her artwork on the refrigerator, while my more technically proficient drawings would receive a pat on the head and be tucked away in a drawer. "Vanessa's so outgoing, just like her father," relatives would comment, while I'd be described as the shy one or sometimes not mentioned at all. The pattern became most apparent during my 5th grade science fair. I'd spent weeks researching photosynthesis, setting up controlled experiments with different plants, and carefully documenting my findings in a meticulously organized binder. The night before the fair, Vanessa, then in 8th grade, looked through my project while I was asleep. At breakfast the next morning, she casually mentioned several of my findings to our parents, presenting them as casual observations she'd made for her own school project. When I tried to speak up, saying those were actually my discoveries for tomorrow's science fair, my parents assumed I'd overheard and misunderstood Vanessa's conversation. "Don't be silly, Olivia," my mother said. "Vanessa has been working on plant biology for weeks." I remember my face burning with frustration as Vanessa gave me a small, triumphant smile behind our parents' backs. That day marked the beginning of my understanding that in our family, Vanessa's voice would always be louder, more believable, more valued than mine. Instead of fighting for attention, I began focusing inward, developing interests that Vanessa showed no inclination toward. While she joined cheerleading and debate club, cultivating the social skills that would later serve her in marketing, I discovered a passion for numbers and business strategy. At 13, I started reading my father's Wall Street Journal, not because anyone encouraged me to, but because nobody, especially Vanessa, paid attention to it. "Math is for nerds," Vanessa declared one evening when she caught me working. through an algebra problem set for fun. Nobody's going to care how smart you are if you can't even talk to people without turning red. Her words stung, but there was also something liberating about her dismissal. If Vanessa thought business and finance were beneath her notice, then perhaps these could become realms where I could define myself outside of her influence. Throughout high school, as Vanessa collected accolades for public speaking and leadership positions in student government, I quietly excelled in economics and computer science. When I mentioned my interest in business school over dinner one night, Vanessa laughed and said, "Really, Olivia? You think you have the personality for business? You can barely order pizza without stuttering." Our parents chuckled, not unkindly but assumptively, as if Vanessa's assessment of my capabilities was simply stating the obvious. That night, lying in bed, I made a silent promise to myself. I would succeed on my own terms, in my own way, even if nobody in my family could see my potential. Little did I know then that this promise would shape the next 15 years of my life, leading me on a path that would eventually intersect with, and perhaps even eclipse, my sister's carefully curated trajectory. The day my college acceptance letters arrived marked the first major divergence in our life paths. Vanessa had already been attending Weston University, an Ivy League school with a prestigious marketing program, for 2 years by then. Her acceptance had been celebrated with a special dinner, photographs, and congratulatory calls to all our relatives. When I received my full academic scholarship to State University's business program, my parents were pleased but not ecstatic. "State has a decent program," my father said, with the kind of measured approval that suggested he was making the best of a disappointing situation. Vanessa, home for spring break, glanced at my acceptance letter and financial aid package. "At Troyes. Least you won't have student loans," she said, as if my scholarship was a consolation prize rather than an achievement. "Though you'll miss out on the connections you'd make at a real university." That comment set the tone for our college years. Every time Vanessa came home, she brought stories of networking events with industry leaders, exclusive internship opportunities, and social connections with children of CEOs and politicians. Meanwhile, I worked double shifts at the campus coffee shop between classes, built relationships with professors rather than partying with classmates, and secured an internship at a small tech startup that nobody in my family had heard of. At Thanksgiving during my junior year, Vanessa arrived with her new boyfriend, James, a finance major from a wealthy New York family. As we passed dishes around the table, the conversation inevitably turned to our studies and future plans. "James just accepted an offer at McKinsey," Vanessa announced proudly, squeezing his arm. "And I've been shortlisted for the marketing associate position at GlowPath. You know, they only take graduates from top-tier schools." She turned to me with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "What about you, Olivia? Still working at that coffee shop?" I explained that I'd been offered a full-time position at the tech startup where I'd been interning, working on financial analytics. The company was small but growing, with innovative products in the enterprise software space. Before I could elaborate, Vanessa cut in. "So you'll be crunching numbers in a tiny cubicle somewhere? That sounds suitable for you, I guess. Not everyone is cut out for the pressure of high-profile client work." Our parents nodded along, accepting Vanessa's framing of my career choice as settling for something lesser, rather than pursuing something different. That night, I sat on my childhood bed scrolling through financial news sites, reading about investment strategies and startup valuations. A small voice inside me wondered if Vanessa was right. Maybe I was hiding in numbers because I wasn't charismatic enough for real success. But a stronger voice reminded me that there were many paths to achievement, and that the financial world rewarded results over reputation. During those early post-college years, while Vanessa secured her position at GlowPath and began her ascent through their corporate hierarchy, I was learning the fundamentals of business growth and investment from the ground up. My modest salary allowed me to live simply in a shared apartment, but I saved aggressively, putting aside 40% of my income while my peers spent lavishly on luxury apartments and weekend getaways. I studied investment strategies in my free time, attended free workshops on financial literacy, and began making small but strategic investments in emerging tech companies. My first significant success came 3 years after graduation, when a small educational technology company I'd invested in was acquired by a larger corporation, yielding a 300% return on my initial investment. I celebrated alone in my apartment, with a glass of wine and a quiet sense of validation, telling no one in my family about this milestone. By then, I'd learned that my achievements would never be valued in the same currency as Vanessa's, so I stopped offering them up for evaluation. While she collected job titles and social media followers, I was building something less visible but potentially more substantial: financial independence and investment acumen. The divergence in our paths was becoming clearer, though only I could see the full picture. To everyone else, especially at family gatherings, I was still just quiet Olivia with the ordinary job, nodding politely while Vanessa held court with stories of marketing campaigns for luxury brands and client meetings in glamorous locations. I didn't know then that these parallel journeys would eventually intersect in a way neither of us could have anticipated. As we entered our 30s, the contrast between our lifestyles became even more pronounced, though not in the way my family perceived. Vanessa had reached what appeared to be the pinnacle of professional success: senior brand strategist at GlowPath, married to James, who had become an investment banker, living in a luxury condo in the city with the right address and the right furniture featured on her meticulously curated Instagram. Yet despite these outward markers of achievement, I began noticing an edge of desperation creeping into her interactions with me. It started at our cousin May's wedding 3 years ago. I'd just turned 30 and had recently moved into a management position at a mid-sized financial technology firm, a significant step up from my previous role, though still modest compared to Vanessa's title. During the reception, as family members caught up with each other, my aunt asked about my work. Before I could answer, Vanessa swooped in. "Olivia's still figuring things out," she said, patting my shoulder condescendingly. "Not everyone peaks. Early like some of us." She laughed, making it sound like a joke, but her eyes held a challenging gleam. "Actually," I started to explain my new role, but Vanessa immediately launched into a story about GlowPath's recent campaign for a famous luxury brand, effectively drowning out my voice. 6 months later, at our grandmother's 80th birthday celebration, the pattern continued. This time, when a family friend asked about my career, Vanessa interrupted again. "Olivia works with spreadsheets all day," she said dismissively. "So dull I can barely stay awake when she talks about it. Meanwhile, I just got back from our company retreat in Bali. The CEO personally commended my team's work on the Luminance account. Christmas that year brought more of the same." Vanessa and James arrived in matching cashmere sweaters, bearing expensive gifts and photos from their recent vacation in the Maldives. As we gathered in the living room after dinner, my father asked about my recent promotion. I'd become an investment analyst at a boutique firm that specialized in tech startups, a position that allowed me to leverage my growing expertise in market trends and valuation. "Dad, you're so sweet to take an interest," Vanessa cut in before I could speak, "but trust me, Olivia's job is basically just data entry with a fancier title. Now let me tell you about this amazing opportunity I've been given to lead GlowPath's expansion into Asian markets." Her dismissiveness was no longer subtle. It had become blatant and increasingly cruel. Around this time, Vanessa's social media presence began to reflect this same attitude. She wouldn't name me directly, but her posts contained thinly veiled references to people who settle for mediocrity and the difference between those who dream and those who achieve. One post particularly stung: a carefully filtered photo of her office view with the caption, "Some people count other people's money, others make it. Blessed, worn GlowPath life." The comments section filled with admiring responses, including several from our extended family members. These public displays of superiority coincided with what I later learned was a plateau in Vanessa's career. Despite her boasting, she'd been passed over for promotion twice, while younger colleagues advanced ahead of her. James, too, had hit roadblocks at his firm, leading them to stretch financially to maintain the lifestyle they felt entitled to. None of this was evident to our family, who continued to see Vanessa as the epitome of success. For my part, I'd stopped sharing career developments altogether. My investment portfolio had grown significantly, and I'd begun making angel investments in promising startups, building a reputation in financial circles that never intersected with my family life. When my parents asked what I was up to these days, I gave vague responses about still at the same company and working on interesting projects, knowing that any specifics would either be dismissed by Vanessa or misunderstood by my parents, who measured achievement by job titles and brand names. This created a strange dual existence. Professional Olivia, who was increasingly respected for her investment acumen and financial strategy, and family Olivia, who was still seen as the underachieving younger sister who couldn't quite find her place in the world. The emotional toll of this dichotomy weighed on me, especially during family gatherings where I'd sit silently as Vanessa dominated conversations, wondering if I should finally reveal the truth about my growing success or continue letting her believe her own narrative. Our parents noticed the tension but attributed it to normal sibling rivalry, occasionally telling me in private, "Try not to take it personally, dear. Vanessa has always been competitive." What they didn't understand was that for Vanessa, this wasn't competition. It was complete dismissal of my worth and potential. And while part of me longed for their recognition and validation, another part had grown weary of seeking approval from people who had decided my value decades ago. The internal conflict gnawed at me. Continue my path of quiet achievement or finally stand up and challenge the family mythology that Vanessa had so carefully constructed. Little did I know that circumstances would soon force this decision in a way none of us could have anticipated. The turning point in my career came suddenly, but not without groundwork. For years, I'd been building my portfolio methodically, diversifying investments across tech startups, established companies undergoing digital transformation, and emerging market opportunities. By my 32nd birthday, my net worth had quietly grown to 7 figures, though I still lived in my modest apartment and drove the same reliable sedan I'd purchased 5 years earlier. Unlike Vanessa and James, who spent lavishly on visible status symbols, I reinvested most of my returns, watching my financial foundation strengthen with each strategic decision. The investment community began to notice. Margaret Winters, a veteran venture capitalist known for her sharp mind and sharper standards, reached out after reading an analysis I'd published in a financial technology journal. Most investors your age chase trendy unicorns without understanding fundamentals, she told me over coffee at her private club. You recognize value where others see only spreadsheets. Margaret became both mentor and advocate, inviting me to join her angel investment group where I could leverage my analytical skills alongside experienced investors. You have extraordinary talent, Olivia, she said once, studying me with piercing blue eyes. But you seem reluctant to claim your achievements. May I ask why? The question caught me off guard. No one had ever noticed, much less questioned, my habit of downplaying my success. After a moment's hesitation, I told her about Vanessa, about growing up as the invisible sister, about the family dynamics that had shaped my approach to recognition. Margaret listened without interruption, then said simply, "The tallest trees grow silently for decades before anyone notices their height. But make no mistake, eventually they tower over everything else in the forest." Her words stayed with me as I continued building my investment portfolio, gradually taking larger positions and more calculated risks. Then came the opportunity that would change everything. Centauri Holdings, a multinational corporation with diverse business interests including technology, marketing, and media, was looking for significant private investment to fund aggressive expansion plans. Their portfolio included several well-known brands, including, coincidentally, Glowpath Marketing, the company where Vanessa had built her career and identity. I spent weeks researching every aspect of Centauri's business model, financial health, and growth strategy. I analyzed market trends, competitive landscapes, and potential risks. I built complex models projecting various outcomes based on different variables. The deeper I dug, the more convinced I became that this was an extraordinary opportunity, not just financially, but perhaps personally as well. After consulting with Margaret and other trusted advisors, I made the decision to liquidate several successful positions in my portfolio and make my largest investment to date, $20 million for a significant minority stake in Centauri Holdings. The deal gave me effective oversight of several subsidiaries, including Glowpath, and a seat on the executive advisory board. The signing ceremony was surreal. I sat in a gleaming conference room on the 40th floor of a downtown skyscraper, dressed in my one designer suit, purchased on sale 2 years earlier, signing documents that transformed me from successful individual investor to major corporate stakeholder. "We're thrilled to have someone with your analytical precision and strategic vision join our team, Ms. Chen," said Robert Keller, Centauri's CEO. "Your reputation for identifying value and growth potential precedes you." After the meeting, as executives in expensive suits shook my hand and exchanged business cards, I experienced a moment of dissonance. These people, these powerful business leaders, saw me as a peer, a valuable partner, someone whose opinion mattered. If only my family could see me now, I thought, before immediately questioning why that still mattered to me. On the drive home, I debated whether to share this news with my parents and Vanessa. Part of me craved the validation, imagining their shocked expressions when they realized the scale of my success. But another part, the part that had learned to protect myself, from Vanessa's dismissal, hesitated. Would they even believe me? Or would Vanessa find some way to diminish this achievement too, to frame it as luck rather than skill, opportunity rather than preparation? I decided to keep my investment quiet for now, at least until I better understood the implications of my new position. The irony wasn't lost on me. After years of Vanessa looking down on my career, I now indirectly controlled the future of hers. GlowPath was just one subsidiary in Centauri's extensive portfolio, but it represented something significant in the context of our relationship. Not that I planned to use this position to influence her career. Ethical boundaries between personal and professional life were too important to me. But knowing that I now sat at the table where decisions affecting her workplace were made gave me a complicated feeling I couldn't quite name. Was it satisfaction? Vindication? Or simply the strange circular nature of life bringing our separate paths back into unexpected alignment? The question lingered as I fielded calls and emails from Centauri executives in the weeks following the investment, learning about ongoing projects, strategic initiatives, and pending decisions that required stakeholder input. Among these communications were several concerning GlowPath's operations, including proposed restructuring that would affect their brand strategy division, Vanessa's department. As I reviewed these materials from my home office, dressed in comfortable clothes with my hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, I couldn't help but imagine Vanessa in her corner office, unaware that her little sister, the one she'd been condescending to for decades, was now reviewing documents that would shape the future of her career. The universe, it seemed, had a sense of humor after all, or perhaps just a sense of justice. The invitation to Dad's 65th birthday brunch came 3 weeks after my Centauri investment. Mom texted our family group chat, "Special celebration for Dad this Sunday, 11 a.m. at Maison Laurent. Dressy casual. No gifts, just your presence." Vanessa immediately responded with enthusiasm, "Can't wait to celebrate the best dad ever. James and I will bring champagne," while I sent a simple, "looking forward to it." In the days leading up to the brunch, my involvement with Centauri intensified. Daily emails required my input on various matters, including a major marketing initiative at GlowPath that would restructure several departments. I found myself in video conferences with senior management, carefully weighing options that would affect hundreds of employees, potentially including my sister. The cognitive dissonance was striking. In these meetings, I was Ms. Chen, the respected investor whose opinion carried significant weight. In my family's eyes, I was still just Olivia, Vanessa's less accomplished little sister. Sunday morning dawned bright and clear. I woke early, responding to several urgent emails before preparing for brunch. As I stood before my closet, I deliberated longer than usual on my outfit. Normally, for family gatherings, I defaulted to simple, unmemorable attire, partly from habit, partly to avoid Vanessa's subtle critiques of my fashion sense. Today felt different. I selected a tailored navy dress I'd purchased for investor meetings, paired with simple pearl earrings and low heels, professional but not showy, confident but not trying too hard. As I applied minimal makeup, my phone buzzed with an incoming call. Vanessa. I hesitated before answering, bracing myself. "Morning, superstar," she said, her voice breezily confident. "Just checking if you're still coming to Dad's thing today." Something in her tone suggested this wasn't a casual check-in. "Of course," I replied. "Mom's been planning this for weeks." Vanessa laughed, the sound like glass clinking. "Great. I've got awesome news to share with everyone. I wasn't going to say anything yet, but I just got a massive promotion at GlowPath. Executive Director of Strategic Partnerships. They're restructuring the whole department around my vision." My stomach tightened. The restructuring she mentioned was precisely what I'd been discussing with Centauri's leadership team all week. The executive changes hadn't been finalized yet. In fact, I had documents waiting for my review that would determine the final organizational structure. Either Vanessa was exaggerating a potential promotion, or someone at Glowpath had jumped the gun. That's interesting, I said carefully. I thought those decisions weren't finalized yet. There was a slight pause before Vanessa's voice returned, sharper. What would you know about it? Anyway, don't worry about understanding the corporate world. Just be there at 11 and try to wear something decent for once. This is a special day for Dad, and I'm bringing my photographer friend to capture everything. The call ended before I could respond. I stood looking at my phone, a complex mixture of emotions washing over me. Part of me wanted to check my emails to see if Glowpath's leadership had made decisions without proper approval, but another part recognized that would be crossing a line between personal and professional matters. Instead, I finished getting ready, grabbed my keys, and headed to my car. The drive to Maison Laurent, an upscale French restaurant downtown, gave me time to collect my thoughts. Vanessa's claim about a promotion that didn't align with the information I had was troubling. Was she lying to impress the family, or had information leaked within Glowpath, creating false expectations? Either way, today's brunch had become more complicated than a simple birthday celebration. I rehearsed responses to potential provocations. From Vanessa, reminding myself to stay calm and not allow her to push my buttons as she had so many times before. This wasn't about one-upping her. It was about maintaining my dignity regardless of her behavior. I arrived at the restaurant 15 minutes early, handed my keys to the valet, and walked into the elegant lobby with its marble floors and crystal chandeliers. Mom and Dad were already seated at a corner table on the terrace, enjoying the spring sunshine. Dad stood to hug me, his face lighting up with genuine pleasure. "There's my Olivia," he said warmly, always punctual. Mom kissed my cheek, complimenting my dress with mild surprise, as if she hadn't expected me to make an effort. "Vanessa just texted that they're running a few minutes late," she said, checking her phone. "Something about a work emergency she had to handle first." I nodded, unsurprised. Vanessa's work emergencies had a convenient habit of occurring before family gatherings, ensuring her arrival would be noticed and her professional importance emphasized. We ordered drinks and chatted about Dad's retirement plans, my parents' upcoming anniversary trip, and neutral topics that kept the conversation pleasant. 20 minutes later, Vanessa and James made their entrance, immediately transforming the quiet family moment into something more performative. Vanessa wore a designer dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent, her hair professionally styled, makeup perfect. James, tall and conventionally handsome in an expensive suit, followed with a bottle of champagne, greeting my parents, with practiced charm. "Sorry we're late," Vanessa announced, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "The CEO needed my input on the Asian market expansion strategy before the board meeting tomorrow." She air-kissed Mom's cheeks, hugged Dad with careful enthusiasm to avoid wrinkling her outfit, and gave me a quick nod. "Olivia, you made it. And in a new dress. How nice." Her tone suggested mild approval mixed with surprise, as if my appearance exceeded her low expectations. As they sat down, Vanessa immediately positioned herself as the focal point of the table, angling toward my parents while subtly turning her back slightly toward me. James ordered champagne for the table, insisting we toast not only to Dad's birthday but also to Vanessa's incredible news. I sipped my water, watching the familiar dynamic unfold, feeling the table being set, both literally and figuratively, for the confrontation that had been building for decades. The waiter arrived with menus, momentarily pausing Vanessa's monologue about her supposedly confirmed promotion. "Before we order," Dad said, "I want to thank you all for being here. Having both my daughters together is the best gift." He looked genuinely happy, and I felt a pang of guilt about the tension I knew was brewing. Perhaps sensing an opening to bring me into the conversation, Mom turned to me. "Olivia, how are things at your job? Still enjoying it?" Before I could answer, Vanessa jumped in. "Mom, let's not make Olivia uncomfortable. You know she doesn't like talking about work." She gave me what appeared to be a sympathetic smile that didn't reach her eyes. "It's okay to be private about career struggles. We all hit plateaus sometimes." I took a slow breath, determined to remain calm. "Actually, things are going well. I've made some significant—" Vanessa cut me off again, turning to James. Honey, tell them about your firm's new client. It's so impressive. James launched into a rehearsed story about his company landing a major account, with Vanessa nodding enthusiastically and adding commentary about how their combined networking skills had facilitated the connection. My parents listened attentively, asking follow-up questions that extended the narrative for another 10 minutes. When the topic finally exhausted itself, Mom made another attempt. Olivia was about to tell us about her work. You were saying, dear? I started again. I've been focusing on investment opportunities in the tech sector and recently— Oh, my God, Vanessa interrupted, laughing loudly. You still work at that tiny place? Her voice carried across the restaurant, causing several diners to glance our way. How long has it been now? 5 years? 6? At the same entry-level job? She turned to our parents, her expression a mixture of amusement and pity. Olivia's still at that little financial analysis firm, crunching numbers in a cubicle. It's sweet, really. Some people just value stability over advancement. The deliberate condescension in her voice made my cheeks burn. James chuckled on cue while my parents exchanged uncomfortable glances. Dad cleared his throat. Everyone has their own path, Vanessa. His attempt at diplomacy only seemed to encourage her. Of course, Dad. Not everyone can handle the pressure of executive leadership. Some people are more behind-the-scenes types. Right, Olivia? She smiled at me with false kindness. There's no shame in that. We need worker bees, too. Something shifted inside me at that moment. Years of accumulated slights, dismissals, and condescension crystallized into perfect clarity. I'd spent so long allowing Vanessa to define me in our family's eyes, to minimize my achievements while exaggerating her own. The familiar feelings of hurt and embarrassment were still there, but now they were accompanied by something new. Resolve. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with an incoming email. Glancing down, I saw the sender. Robert Keller, CEO of Centauri Holdings. The subject line read, Urgent, GlowPath restructuring approval required. Major investor sign-off needed. The universe, it seemed, had impeccable timing. You know, Vanessa, I said quietly, my voice steadier than I expected. I think you might be operating on outdated information. She raised a perfectly shaped eyebrow, the corners of her mouth curved in amused skepticism. About what, exactly? About where I work, about what I do, about who I am professionally. I picked up my water glass to take a sip, giving myself a moment to decide exactly how much to reveal. For years, I'd protected myself by keeping my success private, but the cost of that privacy had become too high. Vanessa snorted. Please. You've been hiding in that back-office financial job forever. It's fine, really. Not everyone is cut out for visibility and leadership. She gestured to the waiter for more champagne, as if dismissing the very idea that I might have something significant to share. I placed my phone on the table, the email notification still visible on the screen. Actually, I'm not at that firm anymore. I've been building an investment portfolio for years and recently became a major stakeholder in Centauri Holdings. James's eyebrows lifted slightly. As an investment banker, he recognized the name immediately. Vanessa, however, looked blank. Centauri what? Is that another small financial company? A glimmer of cold satisfaction flowed through me. Centauri Holdings is a multinational corporation with subsidiaries in technology, media, and marketing. One of their companies is GlowPath Marketing, your employer, Vanessa. The color drained from her face as the implication sank in. That's not possible. GlowPath is owned by Centauri Holdings, I finished for her. And 3 weeks ago, I became one of their major investors, with oversight responsibilities for several subsidiaries, including GlowPath. James was staring at me now, mental calculations clearly running behind his eyes. My parents looked confused, trying to process this unexpected revelation. Vanessa's face cycled through disbelief, shock, and the beginning stages of damage control. You're making this up, she said, her voice lacking its usual confidence. You can't possibly have that kind of money or influence. Without a word, I turned my phone toward her, displaying the email from Centauri's CEO. She scanned it quickly, her eyes widening at the greeting. Dear Ms. Chen, as our valued major investor, Your sign-off is required on the proposed executive restructuring at GlowPath Marketing. Vanessa's face paled further. That restructuring, my promotion, hasn't been approved yet, I finished quietly. The executive committee made recommendations, but major changes require investor approval. That email is asking for mine. The table fell into stunned silence. For perhaps the first time in her adult life, Vanessa seemed completely at a loss for words. My father was the first to recover. Olivia, are you saying that you're an owner of Vanessa's company? The pride and confusion in his voice created a complex emotion in my chest. I'm a significant minority investor, I clarified. I don't run day-to-day operations, but I do have oversight on major decisions and restructuring. I looked directly at Vanessa. I've always kept my professional achievements private because they were never valued in our family conversations. It seemed easier to let you believe what you wanted about my career than to constantly defend it against dismissal. Vanessa's shock was transforming into something harder, a defensive anger beginning to form in her eyes. Mom reached for my hand. Why didn't you tell us, sweetheart? All this time? Because, I said gently. Every time I tried to talk about my work, Vanessa would interrupt, minimize, or redirect the conversation. After a while, it seemed pointless to keep trying. The waiter approached with more champagne, sensed the tension, and discreetly retreated. Vanessa finally found her voice. This is ridiculous. Even if you did make some lucky investment, you can't possibly understand the intricacies of corporate marketing. You've always been the quiet one, the background person, the one who watches and listens and analyzes, I finished. The one who sees patterns in numbers and behavior. The one who built something substantial while you were building an image. The words weren't meant to wound, merely to state facts, but Vanessa flinched as if struck. She turned to our parents, clearly expecting them to side with her as they always had. But they were looking at me with new eyes, reassessing decades of family dynamics in light of this revelation. The power balance at our table had shifted completely, and everyone felt it. In that moment, looking at my sister's stunned face, I realized that the validation I'd craved for so long had finally arrived. But it felt different than I'd imagined. There was no triumphant joy, no vindictive satisfaction. Instead, I felt a complex mixture of relief, sadness for years wasted seeking approval, and a strange empathy for Vanessa, whose carefully constructed narrative had just collapsed. The brunch that had begun as a celebration of my father's birthday had transformed into something else entirely, a moment of truth that would forever alter our family's understanding of both Vanessa and me. This doesn't make any sense, Vanessa insisted, her voice taking on the sharp edge it always did when she felt threatened. How could you possibly have enough money to become a major investor in a corporation like Centauri? You've always lived so modestly. There was confusion in her question, but also a glimmer of something else. A recalibration happening behind her eyes, as if she were reviewing our entire history through a new lens. I've been investing consistently for over a decade, I explained, keeping my voice level. I lived below my means, saved aggressively, and made strategic investments while building relationships in the financial community. Success doesn't always look like luxury brands and social media posts. James was studying me with new interest, professional curiosity overriding family dynamics. Centauri's recent private investment round was extremely selective. We tried to get some of our clients in, but they weren't accepting just anyone. You must have impressed them significantly. I nodded, acknowledging his point without arrogance. I've built a track record with tech investments and digital transformation projects. Margaret Winters recommended me to Centauri's board. James's eyebrows shot up at the mention of Margaret's name. Her reputation in investment circles was legendary. Vanessa glanced between us, clearly frustrated that James seemed to be validating my claims. Who is Margaret Winters? And why are we even entertaining this? Olivia has always been, more behind the scenes. My father, who had been unusually quiet, finally spoke. I think that's exactly the point, Vanessa. We've all made assumptions about Olivia based on her quiet nature. Maybe we've been missing something important all along. His words carried the weight of self-reflection. And I felt an unexpected rush of emotion at hearing my father acknowledge, even indirectly, how I'd been overlooked. Mom reached for my hand across the table. "Olivia, I had no idea you were doing so well. Why didn't you ever say anything?" The question wasn't accusatory, just genuinely confused. Before I could answer, Vanessa cut in. "Because she's making this up, Mom. This is probably some tiny investment she's blowing out of proportion to sound impressive for once." The desperation in her voice was palpable. I sighed, then did something I rarely did in family settings. I took control of the conversation. "I understand this is shocking, Vanessa. It doesn't align with the narrative you've constructed about me, about us. But it's reality." I opened my email app and turned my phone toward the table, scrolling through recent communications with Centauri's executive team, the investment agreement, meeting minutes where my input had been noted on key decisions. These are real. My position is real. And yes, I now have oversight authority on major decisions at GlowPath, including the restructuring you mentioned. Vanessa stared at the evidence, her face cycling through disbelief, anger, and the beginning stages of acceptance. "Why didn't you tell me you were investing in my company?" she demanded, as if this were somehow a betrayal rather than a coincidence. "I didn't invest in Centauri because of you," I clarified. "I invested because it made financial sense." GlowPath is just one of many subsidiaries. I didn't even know you worked there until after the deal was signed. This was mostly true, though I'd been aware of the connection. It simply hadn't factored into my decision-making. My father, always the practical one, was connecting dots. "So this restructuring Vanessa mentioned, her promotion, you'll be deciding whether that happens?" The question highlighted the uncomfortable intersection of our personal and professional lives. "The executive committee makes recommendations," I explained. "Investors review them for financial soundness and strategic alignment. I wouldn't make decisions about specific individuals unless there were unusual circumstances." I looked directly at Vanessa. "Your career at GlowPath will continue to be based on your own performance and your management's assessment. Our personal relationship won't factor into my professional oversight." The unspoken message was clear. I wouldn't use my position to harm her career, but neither would I artificially advance it. Vanessa seemed to be processing this, her expression unreadable. "I still don't understand why you've kept all this secret," my mother said. "We would have been so proud." The simple statement hit me harder than I expected. Would they have been proud? Or would Vanessa have found ways to diminish my achievements, to position them as less valuable than her more visible career path? "I tried to share my progress many times over the years," I said quietly. "But whenever I spoke about my work, I was talked over, dismissed, or subjected to comparisons that made my path seem lesser. Eventually, I stopped trying." My parents exchanged uncomfortable glances, recognition dawning in their eyes. They had witnessed this dynamic but had never intervened. James, ever the strategist, seemed to be reassessing me entirely. "Centauri's portfolio includes some impressive tech companies. Are you involved with any of their AI initiatives? I have clients who would be very interested in connecting." His attempt to network with me, something he'd never bothered to do before, might have been amusing if it weren't so transparent. "I don't discuss specific investment details outside proper channels," I replied coolly. "Professional boundaries are important to me." This seemed to impress him more than anything else I'd said. Vanessa had remained uncharacteristically silent, her mind visibly racing. Finally, she looked up, composure partially restored. "Well," she said with forced lightness, "this is quite the birthday surprise, isn't it, Dad? My little sister, the secret tycoon." The attempt at humor fell flat, the strain evident in her voice. Dad reached across the table and took my hand. "I'm sorry we didn't see it sooner, Olivia. But I'm incredibly proud of what you've accomplished." The simple validation, decades overdue, meant more than I wanted to admit. "Thank you, Dad. That means a lot." I turned to Vanessa, offering an olive branch. "Success looks different for different people. Your achievements in marketing are significant. Mine just happened to take a less visible path. She nodded stiffly, clearly struggling to process this seismic shift in our family's understanding of me, and by extension, of her. The waiter approached again, sensing a break in the tension. "Are we ready to order?" he asked diplomatically. As we picked up our menus, the dynamic at our table had fundamentally changed. My mother asked detailed questions about my investment work. My father beamed with pride. James attempted to engage me in finance discussions. And Vanessa watched it all with the expression of someone witnessing their carefully constructed reality being dismantled piece by piece. As we ordered our meals and the conversation continued, I felt lighter than I had in years. The secret was out. The burden of being perpetually misunderstood by my own family had lifted. Whatever came next, with Vanessa, with Glowpath, with our family dynamics, would at least be based on truth rather than misconception. As we toasted to my father's birthday, his eyes met mine with new understanding and respect. "To both my daughters," he said, raising his glass, "each exceptional in her own way." The simple acknowledgement nearly brought tears to my eyes. All these years, this was all I had wanted. Not to be seen as better than Vanessa, just to be seen accurately, valued for who I actually was rather than who they assumed I must be. The brunch continued, the conversation flowing in new patterns as my family adjusted to this revised understanding of who I was and what I had built. And through it all, Vanessa watched me with new eyes, reassessing everything she thought she knew about her quiet little sister. The days following Dad's birthday brunch unfolded like scenes from an alternate reality. Monday morning, my phone lit up with a text from Vanessa. "We need to talk. Coffee after work?" I agreed, curious about what this conversation would entail. Before I could speculate further, my inbox filled with the regular flow of business communications, including a company-wide announcement from Centauri Holdings about the new leadership structure at Glowpath. The restructuring had been approved over the weekend, not by me alone, but by the full investor committee. Vanessa's department was indeed changing, but contrary to what she'd claimed at brunch, she hadn't received the executive director position. Instead, the role had gone to her colleague, Miranda Wong, with Vanessa named as a senior team lead reporting to Miranda. I wondered if she had seen the announcement yet. My question was answered minutes later when my phone exploded with notifications. 3 missed calls from Vanessa, followed by a barrage of texts. "Did you do this? Call me immediately. I know you're behind this." I took a deep breath before responding. "I'm in meetings until noon." The restructuring decision was made by the full investor committee based on executive recommendations. I'd be happy to discuss professional boundaries when we meet for coffee. Perhaps it was cold, but maintaining that separation between personal, history, and professional responsibility felt essential. The rest of the day passed in a blur of work obligations. At 5:30, I arrived at the agreed-upon coffee shop, neutral territory, away from both our workplaces. Vanessa was already there, immaculately dressed as always, but with unmistakable tension in her posture. "I didn't do this to spite you," I said as I sat down, addressing the elephant in the room immediately. The restructuring plan was already in motion before I became an investor. The committee voted based on performance metrics and strategic alignment. Vanessa's eyes flashed. "You expect me to believe that? After years of me being more successful, suddenly you have power over my company and I get passed over for promotion? That's quite a coincidence." The familiar dismissiveness in her tone triggered old feelings, but I pushed them aside. "Vanessa, I've reviewed your department's reports. You're an effective marketer, but Miranda has consistently outperformed you in client retention and team leadership metrics. This isn't personal, it's business." She stared at me, searching for signs of vindictiveness or gloating, but finding only professional detachment. "How long?" she finally asked. "How long have you been this successful, while pretending to be just getting by?" The question revealed how completely she had misunderstood my life. I never pretended anything. I tried to share my career progress many times, but you always interrupted or dismissed it. Eventually, I stopped trying. She looked away, perhaps remembering specific instances. "I thought you were just, I don't know, doing some basic financial job, spreadsheets and stuff." That's because you never actually listened when I tried to explain what I did, I said, keeping my voice even. You decided early on that your path was more impressive, and you filtered everything I said through that assumption. The next morning brought another unexpected development. I received an email from Robert Keller, Centauri's CEO, mentioning he'd gotten an unusual request. Ms. Chen, your sister Vanessa contacted me directly, referencing your family relationship and requesting a meeting to discuss the recent restructuring. While I appreciate family connections, we generally maintain formal channels for organizational concerns. How would you like me to proceed? The boundary crossing was so characteristically Vanessa that I might have laughed if it weren't so professionally inappropriate. I responded thanking him for bringing this to my attention and suggesting that Vanessa follow standard HR protocols for any concerns about organizational changes. Later that week, I visited Centauri's headquarters for scheduled meetings. Walking through the lobby of Glowpath's floor, I noticed the newly updated investor plaque on the wall, my name now prominently displayed among others. As I stood there, a familiar voice called out, "Olivia?" I turned to find Vanessa's colleague Miranda, now her superior, approaching with a warm smile. "I thought that was you. I'm so glad to finally meet in person. Your insights during the digital marketing strategy session last month were brilliant." We chatted briefly about upcoming initiatives, with Miranda expressing genuine appreciation for my perspective on their Asian market expansion. As we talked, I noticed Vanessa watching from across the lobby, her expression unreadable. The conversation concluded with Miranda saying, "We should grab lunch sometime. I'd love to pick your brain about emerging tech integration in marketing analytics." I agreed politely, aware of Vanessa still observing us. After Miranda departed, Vanessa approached, tension evident in her carefully controlled movements. "So, this is the real you," she said, gesturing vaguely at my professional attire and the context of our encounter. "All these years you've had this whole other life." "Not another life," I corrected gently. "Just the one I actually lived, while you were imagining a different one for me." Her phone buzzed. A message from James, I noticed. Ever since the Brunch revelation, he'd been reaching out to me with transparent attempts to network. Suddenly, interested in my investment philosophy and portfolio strategy, I'd maintained polite but firm professional boundaries. "James wants to know if you'll meet with some of his clients," Vanessa said, her tone suggesting she found his behavior as transparent as I did. "He's been talking about nothing but you. And Centauri since Sunday." I shook my head. "I don't mix family and investment decisions. He's welcome to have his clients apply through official channels." Something shifted in Vanessa's expression. Perhaps respect. Perhaps just reassessment. "You're really serious about those boundaries, aren't you?" "I have to be. Integrity matters in my field." 2 weeks after the brunch, my parents invited me to dinner. Just me, not Vanessa. Over my mother's homemade lasagna, they asked thoughtful questions about my career, listening attentively to explanations they'd never shown interest in before. "We always knew you were smart," Dad said, "but we had no idea you were building something so significant." There was pride in his voice, but also regret. "We should have paid more attention." Mom reached for my hand. "I think we got used to Vanessa needing the spotlight, and you seeming okay in the background. That wasn't fair to you." The simple acknowledgement brought unexpected tears to my eyes. "It's okay," I said. "I found my path anyway." "Yes," Dad said, thoughtfully. "You certainly did." 3 days later came the conversation I'd been both expecting and dreading. Vanessa asked to meet at a quiet park bench near her apartment. When I arrived, she was already there, looking uncharacteristically subdued. "I've been thinking a lot," she began without preamble. "About us. About how I've treated you." She looked directly at me, her expression open in a way I rarely saw. "I've been horrible to you, haven't I?" The blunt acknowledgement caught me off guard. "We've had a complicated relationship," I offered diplomatically. She shook her head. "No, I've been dismissive and condescending. I've interrupted you, talked over you, and belittled your achievements. And the whole time," she gestured vaguely, "the whole time you were building something remarkable while I was just talking about building something remarkable." Her candor was disarming. "Why?" I asked simply. Why was it so important to diminish me? Vanessa was quiet for a long moment. I think I've always been terrified of not being special enough, of being ordinary. You seemed content with a quieter life, and I couldn't understand that because I was so desperate for validation. She looked away. Maybe I resented that you seemed at peace while I was constantly striving for external approval. The insight surprised me, not because it was untrue, but because I hadn't expected such self-awareness from her. For what it's worth, I said quietly, I always admired your confidence and social ease. Those things didn't come naturally to me. She laughed softly. Look at us, each envying something in the other, never saying it out loud. We sat in companionable silence for a moment, decades of competition and misunderstanding beginning to dissolve between us. So, she finally said, my little sister is my boss's boss's boss. That's going to take some getting used to. I smiled. I'm not your boss. I'm an investor in the parent company. Different role entirely. Still, she persisted, you have significant influence over Glowpath's future. I do, I acknowledged. But I don't make personnel decisions about individuals. Those come from direct management. Your career at Glowpath will continue to be based on your own performance, not our relationship. She nodded slowly. That's actually reassuring. I wouldn't want special treatment. Not even positive special treatment? She shook her head firmly. No, I want to succeed on my own merits. I think that's something I need to prove to myself now. Something had fundamentally shifted in Vanessa. A humility I'd never seen before, born perhaps from the shock of realizing how completely she had misunderstood her own sister, and by extension herself. As we parted ways that evening, I sensed we were entering uncharted territory in our relationship. The old dynamic had been irreparably altered. What would replace it remained to be seen, but for the first time in decades, I felt genuine hope for a relationship based on mutual respect rather than assumed hierarchy. That night, I received an unexpected email from Vanessa. I've been thinking about something Miranda mentioned today, that presentation you gave about digital integration. Any chance I could see those materials? I think I have a lot to learn. It was a small gesture, but in the context of our history, it felt monumental. My sister was acknowledging that I had something valuable to teach her. I sent the presentation with additional resources, adding a simple note. Happy to discuss anytime. 2 simple words that would have been unimaginable just weeks before. Happy and anytime. The foundation of an entirely new dynamic between us was being laid, one careful brick at a time. 6 months after the revelatory brunch, my family gathered for Thanksgiving dinner at my parents' home. The physical setting was familiar. The same dining table where we'd shared countless meals, the same china patterns, the same traditional menu. But almost everything else had transformed. I arrived early to help Mom in the kitchen, a routine that hadn't changed, but our conversation as we prepared the meal flowed in new patterns. She asked questions about my recent investment in an educational technology startup led by women entrepreneurs, listening attentively to my explanations about scalability and social impact metrics. I never realized how passionate you are about this work, she said, pausing while crimping pie crust. All these years, I thought you were just being private, but you were trying to tell us, weren't you? I nodded, surprised by the lack of resentment I felt discussing this now. I tried for a long time, but eventually it seemed easier to keep that part of my life separate. She looked thoughtful. Your father and I have been talking about this a lot. How we missed so much of who you really are because we fell into patterns of focusing on Vanessa's more visible achievements. She placed a gentle hand on mine. I'm sorry, Olivia. Truly. The simple acknowledgement meant more than I expected. It's okay, Mom. I found my way regardless. Yes, she said, with unmistakable pride. You certainly did. Dad wandered into the kitchen, stealing a bite of stuffing and kissing my cheek. There's my investment genius. The Caltech program director called me yesterday. They want you to speak to their business students next semester about ethical investing principles. This was news to me. They called you? He looked slightly embarrassed. They found my number when they couldn't reach you directly. I hope you don't mind that I gave them your email. The idea of my father proudly telling strangers about my work, even facilitating professional connections, was so far from our previous dynamic that I felt momentarily disoriented. "That's fine, Dad. I'd be happy to speak with them." The doorbell rang, announcing Vanessa and James's arrival. I braced myself instinctively, an old habit not yet unlearned. But the Vanessa who entered was subtly different from the sister I'd known all my life. Her designer outfit was still immaculate, her makeup flawless, but there was something less performative in her demeanor. She hugged our parents warmly, then turned to me with genuine warmth. "Hey, financial genius, brought your favorite wine." She handed me a bottle of the small batch Cabernet I'd mentioned enjoying during our last conversation, a small detail she'd never have bothered remembering in the past. Dinner unfolded with a new conversational balance. Vanessa still shared stories about her work. Old habits die hard. But now she included challenges and learning moments alongside successes. "The transition under Miranda's leadership hasn't been easy," she admitted, "but I'm learning so much about strategic planning." "Actually, Olivia, those resources you sent about digital integration were incredibly helpful. I've been implementing some of those approaches with my team." The acknowledgement, public, sincere, and professional, was unprecedented. "I'm glad they were useful," I replied. "There's a follow-up webinar next month if you're interested. The presenter is brilliant on cross-platform analytics." "I'd love that," she said, making a note in her phone. "Maybe we could watch it together and discuss applications afterward?" This suggestion of voluntary professional collaboration would have been unthinkable 6 months ago. As we cleared the dinner plates, James cornered me in the kitchen. "I've been meaning to ask you," he began, lowering his voice, "about Vanessa's position at Glowpath. Is there anything you could do to, help her advance more quickly?" The old James, seeing family connections as leverageable assets. Some things hadn't changed after all. "James," I said calmly, "my investment role and Vanessa's career are separate matters. She's doing well based on her own merits, which is exactly as it should be." Before he could press further, Vanessa appeared in the doorway. "James, stop it," she said firmly. "Olivia has been clear about professional boundaries, and I respect that. I want to earn my own promotions." The look of surprise on his face at being contradicted by his wife was almost comical. "But babe, it's just a small favor between—" "No," Vanessa interrupted with unexpected conviction. "That's not how either of us wants this to work. Right, Olivia?" The solidarity between us in that moment felt novel and powerful. "Right," I confirmed, meeting my sister's eyes with new understanding. Later, as we settled in the living room for coffee and dessert, Dad raised his cup in an impromptu toast. "To my remarkable daughters," he said warmly, "who are teaching this old man about growth and reconciliation." Mom squeezed his hand, adding, "And to new beginnings." Over the following weeks, Vanessa and I began establishing a different kind of relationship. Not best friends exactly, but something more authentic than we'd ever managed before. We met for occasional lunches where conversations ranged from work challenges to family memories, now viewed through more mature perspectives. During one such lunch in early December, Vanessa surprised me with an insight I hadn't expected. "You know what I've realized?" she said, stirring her soup thoughtfully. "All those years I spent trying to impress everyone, and you were the one actually building something meaningful. I was so focused on looking successful that I missed some opportunities to be successful in ways that mattered more." The self-awareness in her observation struck me. "We all have different paths," I offered. "Your marketing skills are genuinely impressive. You just got caught up in how they looked to others rather than what they meant to you." She nodded slowly. "That's changing, though. I've started volunteer work with a literacy nonprofit, using my communication skills to help them develop better outreach programs. It's not glamorous or impressive at dinner parties, but it feels right." This new dimension of Vanessa, reflective, service-oriented, less concerned with appearances, was a revelation. Around the new year, I launched a mentorship program for young women from disadvantaged backgrounds interested in finance and investment. To my surprise, Vanessa offered to partner on the initiative, contributing marketing expertise to help promote the program and attract both mentors and participants. "We make a good team when we're not competing," she observed as we reviewed applications together one evening. You with the analytical foundation, me with the communication polish. The assessment was accurate, and I found myself appreciating her strengths in a way I never had before. We might have figured this out decades ago if we'd tried collaboration instead of competition, I mused. She looked up from her notes, expression serious. I don't think I was capable of that then. I needed this. Humbling, I guess. Needed to see myself more clearly. The spring brought another family gathering, a casual barbecue at my parents' home. As Vanessa and I prepared a salad together in comfortable silence, Mom watched us with unconcealed wonder. I never thought I'd see this day, she admitted. You two working together without tension. It's beautiful. Vanessa caught my eye, a hint of mischief in her expression. Don't worry, Mom. I'm sure we'll find something to disagree about eventually. But maybe now we can disagree as equals. That word, equals, captured the fundamental shift in our relationship. No longer was she the golden child and I the overlooked younger sister. No longer was she the successful one and I the underachiever. We had found a balance based on mutual respect for our different strengths and paths. One evening in late April, Vanessa called with news. I've been offered a new position at Glowpath, she said, excitement evident in her voice. Leading a special project team for sustainable marketing practices. Miranda recommended me specifically because of the research I've been doing in the field. The genuine achievement, earned through merit rather than self-promotion, clearly meant more to her than previous advancements. That's fantastic, Vanessa. You've worked hard for this. Thanks, she said, then added with surprising vulnerability. It means a lot, hearing that from you. After we hung up, I sat in my home office reflecting on the journey we'd taken over the past year. From that painful brunch confrontation to this moment of sincere celebration of each other's successes, the transformation seemed almost unbelievable. Yet it had happened gradually, through hundreds of small interactions, each one rebuilding trust and understanding between us. Perhaps the most profound change wasn't in our external circumstances, my investment success or Vanessa's career evolution, but in our internal landscapes. I no longer measured my worth through her acknowledgement. She no longer defined herself in opposition to me. We had both found our authentic values and purposes, independent of the comparative framework that had shaped our early lives. As spring turned to summer, Vanessa and I collaborated on something entirely unexpected, a charitable foundation focused on financial literacy for young women. Drawing on my investment expertise and her communication skills, we developed a program that would provide both practical knowledge and mentorship opportunities. During one planning session, Vanessa looked up from her notes with a thoughtful expression. You know what I've realized? Being underestimated was probably your greatest advantage. Nobody was watching you or placing expectations on you, so you could build something extraordinary without interference. The insight struck me with its accuracy. And being overvalued early might have been your greatest challenge, I replied. Always having to live up to expectations rather than defining success on your own terms. She nodded slowly. Exactly. It's taken me this long to understand that validation from others is a poor substitute for self-knowledge. Such wisdom from the sister who had once mocked my quieter path was perhaps the most profound evidence of how far we'd both come. On a warm evening in July, we launched our foundation with a small ceremony attended by family and close colleagues. As Vanessa and I stood side by side presenting our vision, I caught my parents exchanging glances of amazed pride. Later, as guests mingled, Vanessa clinked her glass for attention. I want to share something, she announced. A year ago, I thought success meant having the right title, the right connections, the right address. I measured my worth by external markers and, frankly, by how I compared to others, including my sister. She looked at me with genuine affection. What I've learned since then, largely through Olivia's example, is that true success isn't about being seen by others. It's about seeing yourself clearly and building something meaningful whether anyone is watching or not. The simple truth of her statement resonated deeply with everyone present. As the evening concluded and guests departed, Vanessa and I found ourselves alone on the balcony overlooking the city lights. Did you ever imagine we'd end up here? She asked. Working together? Actually enjoying each other's company? I laughed softly. Never. But I'm grateful we found our way to this place. She turned to face me fully. Me too. And Olivia? Thank you for not using your position to retaliate when you could have. That taught me more than you know. The acknowledgement wasn't necessary, but it completed a circle somehow. Recognition that the power dynamic between us had shifted, been tested, and ultimately transcended in favor of something healthier. In the end, the journey from that painful brunch confrontation to this moment of genuine connection taught me that the most powerful response to being underestimated isn't triumphant revenge, but quiet integrity. Success built on authentic values ultimately speaks for itself, requiring no validation from those who once dismissed it. And relationships, even those damaged by years of misunderstanding, can heal when both parties are willing to see each other and themselves with honest, compassionate clarity. As Vanessa and I looked out at the twinkling city lights, I realized that signing her paycheck had never been the point. The true victory wasn't in proving her wrong about me, but in both of us finding a version of success that no longer needed to be comparative, a success based not on outshining others, but on illuminating our own unique paths forward. Have you ever experienced a relationship where you were constantly underestimated or overlooked? How did you handle it? Did you choose to prove yourself loudly, or build your success quietly like Olivia did? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe for more authentic stories about family dynamics, personal growth, and finding your own path to success. Remember, sometimes being underestimated can be your greatest advantage if you use it wisely. Thank you for spending this time with me today. No matter where you are on your journey, remember that true success isn't measured by others' recognition, but by staying true to your own values and purpose. Until next time, take care of yourself and those you love.